Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Well, one of the most controversial storylines of this summer's campaign season has been the trials and tribulations of the State Independence Party. It has been tied to the indictment of a close political ally of New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and there are now reports that the party itself may be under investigation. State leaders have also feuded with local party members over endorsements, leading some to suggest that the party's executive committee is more concerned with winning favor from incumbents with deep pockets than promoting the party's ideals. Among those who are upset with the state leadership is my next guest, Jeff Graham. He is the mayor of Watertown, and he is joining us from there this evening. Mayor, how are you?
Very good, Liz, and greetings from the North Country.
Which is lovely this time of year, actually.
Great place to be.
So let's start with what's happening in your neck of the woods and then broaden it out, okay?
Sure.
You have, in Jefferson County, decided the independence with this, we should say, independence means big I, not small I.
Right.
Those people are blank, in other words, not affiliated with any party. We'll get to that in a second. You've decided to just disband your local organization. Why is that?
Well, I think it got to a point of perhaps a little bit of fatigue. We've had a constituted committee up here for 12 years. And it just gets to the point where it's difficult to get people motivated to go out and do petitions and so on. And you're right, there has been some disagreement with state leadership, particularly 2 years ago over the Albertine-Barkley race, which I think left some people, I won't call it disillusioned, I would say maybe cynical and jaded would be the better terms for it. And, you know, when you have that kind of attitude pervading things, it's a little tough to get people motivated. So I think many people decided just to take some time off from it. It's not to say anybody's changing registrations or anything like that, but you know, just becoming a cross-endorsed vehicle for the major parties is not really what we all signed up for, and I'm not sure how much we're accomplishing by doing what we're doing.
Well, interestingly, that was what really caused the death of the Liberal Party, that and Andrew Cuomo, of course, in 2002. But, I mean, really what is happening here is you're seeing, first of all, there's friction between the state party chairman, Frank MacKay, and the local leaders, to the extent that there are local leaders. Some counties don't even have independence party organizations.
Often these minor parties in New York State are a little more of an illusion than anything else. In many counties, there are no leaders, no constituted committees, and it's sort of a mile wide, inch deep type of thing. That's not necessarily Frank MacKay's fault. It's just the way it is. I would say this issue of cross-endorsement, you know, you go back to, I think, 1946 when the Wilson-Pakula Act was passed that consolidated authority for out-of-party authorizations to party leaders. I think that it was done at the time to limit the influence, ironically, of communists in the major parties in the state. That's long since passed, but now we have a situation where I think these cross-endorsements under New York's fusion voting are basically, in many cases, commodities that are traded like pork bellies or anything else. And,
or for money,
I'm not sure
right?
that's a good thing.
Well, for money. I mean, that's what part of the problem is, that there's an investigation in Staten Island into, I mean, it looks bad, right? There's an allegation there. There's a situation there where you have a guy named John Tobacco who was running for city council in 2009, and Frank MacKay's wife, the state Independence Party chairman's wife, came and asked him for a business loan. And he gave it to her for $10,000. Now the loan's been paid back, etc. But then, what do you know? He gets the line. I mean, that kind of thing looks awfully bad.
Well, it does. And the people who are upset or outraged at that perhaps are also outraged that there's gambling in a casino. I mean, to a certain extent, these type of transactions go on. And I don't know anything about the Staten Island case per se. I do know, I think it is you know, somewhat unsettling, the amount of money, for instance, Mayor Bloomberg throws into the political machinery, over $100 million on one race alone. And that money isn't just going to Independence Party operatives. There's the whole, you know, I know a lot of the IP people associated with Fulani got a lot of that money. Certainly the current regime has, certainly other parties have. There's various operatives and hangers-on. And when you're throwing that much money into the system, to think it won't have a corrosive effect is naive. And you know, those who talk about political reform and campaign finance reform are very reluctant to say anything about the mayor because he's influential and popular. Well, he may be, but I don't see where with that kind of money really serves the system that well.
Well, and also, regarding what happened over in Western New York, I mean, there's no reason that I could see that a local party leader would want to get involved with an organization if they feel like their voice can't be heard. I mean, these people made a recommendation, and then Frank McKay and the state committee came in and bigfooted them and flipped the recommendations to suit themselves.
Well, you have to understand, sometimes there's an agenda operating at the state level that local people may not have bought into. For instance, up until the most recent cycle, the agenda was to keep the Republicans in control in the state Senate. In part, that was a way to protect fusion voting in New York State, because there was talk at the time the Democrats wanted to repeal it. Now it's a different agenda. It's pretty obvious the Democrats are probably going to retain control, so you want to make sure you've got some friends in the Democratic caucus. So that may explain Valesky and Albertine and maybe a couple of others that they went with. Plus, there has been some criticism, obviously, that you alluded to earlier of pay-to-play, if you want to call it that, and I think you'd want to demonstrate to the contrary if you want to, refute those claims.
Let me ask you, do you believe that maybe it's time for New York State to do away with fusion voting altogether? There aren't that many states that have it.
Well, ironically, Oregon just added it, so I think there's 3 or 4 that have it. Most people in New York don't realize that the vast majority of states do not have fusion voting. You cannot add together different lines on the ballot. I think it's problematic in that the minor parties always start as very idealistic bodies, like the Conservatives, the Liberals, the Independence Party, and then it ends up being, in a way, perverted by whether it's personal ambition, greed, just lust for power, the system, if you will, and you end up being just cross-endorsed vehicles. I think part of it is the Wilson-Pakula Act, because that vests the authority on out-of-party authorizations in the party leaders. So that means all you have to deal with is the people at the top, and then go in and get your operatives and notaries and so on to go out and do petitions.
Well,
I don't think that has anything to do with a real party.
That was mostly because of an